So to those of you who have just tuned in, we're here for another podcast, and we've got a really great topic that we're going to kick off the 2023 with. And we're going to be looking at the effects of wearable technology on our human capital management, on ESG, and our health and safety practices. So we've got two amazing women with us here kicking off the year of 2023. We have Emily Whitcomb, and she is the Director of Work to Zero for the National Safety Council. And we have Aanna Hoch, who is the Client Executive at MakuSafe. So welcome, both of you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to be here.
So let's just dive right into this conversation about, looking at the effects of wearable technology on our human capital management, on our ESG and EHS practices in our organizations. So I wanted to kind of open it up by asking both of you to share a bit about the why around this passion area for you. I know that you're both very passionate about safety, sustainability, and human capital, and some of our listeners may be sitting there going, human what? What are they talking about? So why don't we kick that off? Emily, why don't you go first?
Sure. ESG is quickly becoming a business requirement and really a measure by which organizations look at their impact. Safety isn't always part of that larger ESG discussion, but it really is foundational to ESG efforts, especially in that social pillar. So if a company isn't mature in their safety culture and their performance, how will they be successful in their ESG efforts, right? And in fact, many experts in the field will say that achieving ESG maturity is really only possible if you have mature EHS management. And our EHS teams are really in a perfect position to support those ESG efforts within their organization because of their understanding of regulations and compliance and data collection. This is a part of their everyday job. So with all of that, why is this of interest to me? Well, for the last 3 years, my team has been really focused on making innovation accessible. Let me restart that. For the last 3 years, my team has been really focused on making innovation accessible to companies of all sizes, not just the large Fortune 500s that have the resources to go out and hire expensive consultants to help them implement, but even the small to medium-sized companies who might want to innovate their practices and adopt technology. So we have created resources to really help safety professionals implement technologies like wearables that have huge success in keeping workplaces safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Emily. And so from my perspective at MakuSafe, we're looking at wearables and the impact that it has not only on EHS, but also ESG. We're throwing a lot of acronyms around here. But really, there are so many organizations that are looking for affordable solutions to meet these needs and these demands. And so we are continuing to kind of investigate and better understand wearables' place in that space, and we feel really confident that we can help those people who are tasked with proving out what they're doing to protect their workers, what they're doing to make sure that there's longevity to their workforce. And really protecting their laborers as well. So yeah, we're pleased and excited that so many people are talking about this because wearables fits so beautifully into that ESG space. And we really feel like we have an affordable solution to meet those needs.
So I want to back up a little bit to something that Emily had just said. Now, you were talking about a maturity curve, right? And for some of our listeners, they may understand what you're talking about. And for others, they may not understand. And some listeners may understand what maturity curve means, but they also might be struggling on how do you identify where you are in a maturity curve, and how do you also move along in that maturity curve to the next level. Could either of you maybe speak a little bit about that? Let's start off with how can we identify where we are in a maturity curve?
I can start and hand it over to Aanna, but when we talk about maturity, what we've actually found and what I've seen others show as well is that a lot of companies are still in the compliance stage where their safety practices are really just to be compliant with regulations. We want to move people across that maturity spectrum to be implementing bigger and better programs, to be addressing some of those leading edge EH&S efforts. So the council is actually working on a maturity model right now that can help an organization identify where they're at in their maturity and then give them suggestions of what they can do to become more mature. If we focus a little bit down on technology, recently Work to Zero released what we call a digital readiness assessment. And we like to say, you can't just go out and adopt a technology. There's a lot of things that you need to do to get into place. You need to make sure your HR is ready. You need to make sure your IT is ready. That's one of the biggest ones we hear. And so the digital readiness assessment is about 15 questions, but it tells a company how ready they are to adopt a technology and what they need to do to get more ready. So with that resource is also a white paper that gives suggestions to the organization on how they can get better ready to adopt a technology.
Yeah, Emily, I'm so delighted. And I know that that exists because we've seen it and we're so thankful for that because really, you know, people want to dabble a little bit in technology and they're just not ready for it. You know, our best organizations, our best clients are those who have really vetted technology and have done a really good self-assessment of, hey, what's our safety culture? What can we accept? What's the willingness of our leadership to really champion, you know, some of these ideas? And then let alone for us at least, and what we provide, the data that comes in and the information and insights. Are they ready to act on those? Are they ready to make some investments from what those insights and intelligence say, you know, to really make an impact? I mean, it's great to invest in wearables and safety technology, but it's kind of like a gym membership. You know, you can invest in it, but if you don't ever go to the gym, you're not going to get in shape. So, you know, you have to be ready. Your organization has to be mature and really understand your safety culture and what you're able to and willing to do as an organization.
And just to add to that, Aanna, we have seen organizations of all sizes being ready to implement technology. It's not just the larger organizations that are the more mature. We have seen small organizations that have done the legwork to get themselves ready to innovate their safety practices. And then we've seen large companies who didn't do the legwork, just went out and grabbed the first technology that was of interest to them, and then had to rewind, go back and do some of that legwork in the beginning. So when we're talking about maturity, technology-wise, there's definitely some pre-work that needs to be done.
100%, fully agree with that. And yeah, that would kind of mirror our experiences as well. You know, we are working with really large Fortune 100 companies who, because it's cool and it's what's kind of out there, they're latching on to some technology, but they just haven't done, like you said, the legwork to prepare. It really is a top-down message too. You know, we find those that have leadership that just say, no, this is the course that we're going to take. We believe in this. We want to be data-driven. We want to make some, you know, decisions, some really well-informed decisions. We want those insights that we've never had before. But that message needs to filter all the way through an organization for, you know, these wonderful safety technologies to work.
Yeah, and for the listeners, like what we're talking about when we talk about the maturity curve, there's about 5 steps to the curve. There may be more nuances here and there, but I just kind of do a broad brush where, you know, the first step is usually vulnerability, is that when you've realized that incidents do happen, right? And they can happen not to blame other people, but because of different reasons. The next step is typically a reactive step. And then as you were talking, the third step being compliant, right? Where, you know, there are actual standards and regulations, et cetera, that will help you, and programs in order to help scope a program. And then I think we're starting also in our discussion, though, going from compliant to the proactive and resilient. Those are the last two steps, are proactive and resilient. And I think that's really where things blossom, where you'll see organizations like L'Oreal that extend beyond themselves, right? And so I want to go back to our conversation about when we're looking at health and safety, right? Our practices and everything that we're doing in-house. Could you maybe help kind of share with the audience what you're foreseeing in terms of wearable technology, how this might play a role in the workplace when we are looking at our human capital management, our ESG practices, as well as our EHS practices for those listening? Maybe Aanna, you can kick that one off.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you know, so it's interesting. There are so many wonderful ways in which wearables can make such an impact on that. And I would say mostly what we're thinking about is the way that the leadership really can interact with the worker. And it's an individual look at each individual worker and understanding what they're experiencing, what they're being exposed to, and responding to that. You know, it sometimes seems counterintuitive because technology is often perceived as really impersonal, or wearables maybe are perceived as kind of a big brother idea. But we really have kind of a different approach, at least at MakuSafe. And that's where it really can benefit culture. It can aid human relations. It can help accelerate kind of that human and organizational performance efforts while reducing claims and losses. And we really believe this is through good communication and caring about those individual workers. So if I can be kind of anecdotal here, often if there is an incident that occurs, or let's say a worker is exposed to high heat exposure, right? The leadership is notified of that. And so they have the opportunity to go and ask a question. Hey, worker, you know, valued employee, what are you experiencing? What is it that is causing you, you know, to be exposed to this if it's indoors? So really asking those questions and being curious about what's actually that worker is being exposed to and experiencing. So it's really kind of that human level, that experience, really caring for, you know, that biggest asset to every organization, the workers, the humans there. So we're really focused on that. And we have a real individual granular opportunity with wearables to do that.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more, Aanna. You know, the way we look at it, humans are a company's biggest asset, and ensuring that workers are able to go to work and return home safely day after day is so important and really foundational to that social piece of ESG. Wearable technologies have demonstrated a positive impact on safety. They can also improve the employees' health and well-being. They can increase their productivity and really increase morale when they are backed with the culture that this technology is meant to keep them safe and healthy. They've also shown positive return on investments. Work2Zero released a safety technology investment calculator last year, and wearable technologies like proximity sensors almost always show a positive ROI, even in the first year. And that's with organizations of any size. So this is really a great investment, particularly for those small to medium-sized companies, those low margin companies, and companies that are just dipping their toe into the water of technology.
Right, right. Yeah, and to that point too, you know, not only is it about the worker and making sure they're safe, we're looking at an organization, and a lot of these safety leaders now are going to be held accountable for what they're doing and decisions they're making. What are the efficiencies they're implementing? How are they arguing for those capital investments, right? I mean, safety really does help the bottom line, and the wearable technology helps you make informed decisions. There's data to prove out why you need to invest in a new lift, to help the ergonomics of your worker. And the job function that they're doing. And nobody can argue that safe and healthy employees are more productive employees. I mean, it's a fact, they just are. And if workers are feeling unsafe, or if they witness something, a workplace incident, I mean, that has detrimental effects on a workforce. And so, why can't we figure out a way to forecast risk, to get in front of those things and create a really wonderful work environment for these workers? Happier workers, higher efficiency. You have the good data to prove and to prove kind of what you're doing and what you're seeing as a safety professional as well.
So I wanted to kind of break it down. I know that one of my questions was that if you could give us some practical examples of implementing wearable technology in the workplace, but I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here for that, because for our listeners, I want to make it so it's really applicable for organizations that might be in one of the last stages of the maturity curve. So we're going to pick it up at compliance, right? Then we're going to look at proactive, and then we're going to look at resilience, just to give you a heads up of where we're going with this. So if you're talking to somebody who has a compliance culture right now, where they understand that they need to prevent incidents before they occur, they're really trying to be stringent on meeting the standards and regulations. If you're down in the United States, that would be OSHA. If you're up here in Canada, that would be depending on which province you're in. I'm in Ontario, so we have our Ministry of Labor up here, right? And so really drilling down and trying to keep what those organizations are calling on, which, let's keep in mind, listeners, that's the bare minimum, right? That is our foundation, our starting floor. We want to move up from that. So what would you say would be a top recommendation for those in compliance to be thinking about wearables in what they may be having? Emily, did you want to kick that one off?
So I'd say for those that are in the compliance stage that are looking to invest in technologies, I'd say for them to start down this path, they really should identify what are the goals of their technology program. What are the risks they're solving for? So it's actually part of our free resources is a risk assessment, just looking at the top 18 hazardous situations. We always want companies to adopt technologies to solve for their risks, and not just adopt technologies because they'd be really fun to use in the workplace. So that's a really good place to start. Going back to the digital readiness assessment, for those in compliance, there's likely some things they need to do to get more ready to adopt. It's something as simple as making sure they have the IT functionality. If they're in a compliance mindset, it's likely that they're going to need to do some things in that space. Now, looking at some of the wearable technologies that should be on their radar, again, if it relates back to their top risk, proximity monitoring wearables is a really good starting point. Again, this is a technology that has a huge ROI, and it's also very effective at eliminating some of the top risks, like struck bys, for example. There's a lot of use cases of these types of technologies. We've seen, Amazon's using proximity monitoring wearables for workers going into freezers. We see companies using them for like lone worker monitoring to look for vital signs in case of falls or workplace violence events. I would also suggest a company in that compliance stage to be looking at digital gas monitors, again, if that's relevant to their top risk. We have companies like NiSource, a utility company, that first piloted the digital gas monitors and found that it was so effective at reducing their risk exposure that they ended up scaling it almost immediately to their almost 3,000 workers. So those are just a few examples of technologies that are a really good starting point.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. And Anna, what about you?
Yeah, so often we are entering conversation after they've gone through a lot of those conversations, hopefully some of those assessments, but that's always our recommendation too. And often if it's see if people come to us with it just being, oh, it's cool technology, I'm really interested in just learning more. Those are the questions we ask. What are your goals? What are the risks that you're wanting to mitigate or get in front of? Or, look at your claims history. What are those claims that are plaguing you year over year? And so we really go back to them and just say, what is the goal here? What are you trying to achieve? If it's just safety technology, trust us, you don't want to get into this. There's just too much information, too much data that unless you're ready to act and really be proactive, it's maybe not worth your time.
Okay, great answers. Thank you very much. Now we're going to kind of turn the heat up a little bit more. We're going to along the maturity curve. So the next level on the maturity curve would be proactive. And so for those who are listening, this is where you have more of an ownership type culture. Okay, so you're going to see more involvement at all levels. Right? There's going to be near miss involvement and people reporting more. People understand that they're not being watched. They're not being blamed. It's we're all in this together kind of mentality. So you're going to have a higher level of communication. And hopefully, if you're at this phase, you're also going to see less people hiding things and people feeling that they can trust each other to be respected, to share what they're finding, because we know if we uncover a risk, then we can mitigate it, eliminate it, and that makes the workplace safe for everybody. So I'm going to throw this out to you, Aanna, to kick us off. What kind of tech, what kind of stuff should we be thinking about if we are in that proactive or we're wanting to get to that proactive level?
I'll say, let's go. We're ready. If you're proactive, then, and I can really speak mostly to MakuSafe, obviously, because that's the organization that I work with. And, we really are a technology that encompasses really the entire worker, what they're exposed to and experiencing, both with motion and then environmental conditions. What's beautiful about our technology too, and I understand this is more about thought leadership here, but one thing I love about our technology and really wearable technology for all workers is that it does advocate for the worker. Right? It's something on your arm every day that says, hey, the people I work with care about me. They care about the environment in which I'm working. And for those who have adopted MakuSafe, we give them the option to say, hey, we care and we trust your voice as well. We want to hear from you, worker, because you can leave a voice memo that gets sent directly to leadership. And by giving them that opportunity to share what their experiences are. It's saying, hey, we trust you and we believe, and we want to hear from you too, right? We're talking with our clients about Humble Inquiry. It's a book that was written by Edgar Sheen, I think is how you say his name, but really asking the question of the worker, what are your experiences? Like we see this data, but what's your experience? So we really want to create kind of that environment and foster that. And so for those organizations that are ready to act, are proactive, I'll say, give us a call, MakuSafe, we're ready. But I would say anything that looks at the individual worker, that would be a great recommendation. I'm sure Emily, because this is your space that you work in, you're really looking at all technologies. What would you recommend?
Yeah, well, this proactive group is really ripe to adopt technology solutions. And you hit on it before. This is a great space to build a coalition of stakeholders from the top all the way to the bottom. And they've probably done the work to have that type of culture that allows voices at all levels. But it's so important when you're looking at technology solutions that you're bringing the end user into the conversation in the very beginning, because they often have a better understanding of the risks that you're solving for. They understand the intricacies of the work, what type of tech can and might not work. One great example of that is with exoskeletons. They got really popular a few years ago. A lot of companies went out and invested in it, handed it to their workers, and didn't do that engagement in the beginning. And they found that it didn't work with other PPE. their workforce wasn't bought into it, and they ended up making a huge investment that didn't necessarily pay off because they didn't engage those end users. As far as technologies, I think for that proactive group, I would have them look at fatigue monitoring wearables. That's likely the type of organization that they have moved beyond compliance. They're looking at some of those proactive safety risks to address. Fatigue is one of those underlying fundamental safety issues that I think a lot of workplaces are starting to recognize as an impairment and are looking for ways to address it. So there's a lot of different types of fatigue monitoring wearables out there. There are ones that can measure EEG. There's ones that measure visual cues like microsleep. You have sleep tracking. And just to give you a use case, one of our partners, Exelon, is piloting the wearable that tracks their sleep. And they're actually giving that information back to the workers and educating them on the benefits of sleep health. And they're still in their pilot phase, but they have seen huge returns just in employee morale now that workers feel better equipped, not only knowledge-wise, but technology-wise to address their sleep health. So those are my suggestions for the proactive phase.
And Anna, what type of things can MakuSafe help monitor if I'm interested in my health?
Yeah.
What kind of things would we be able to do then? Like
Absolutely.
Emily gave some examples there about sleep and stuff.
Right. Yeah, thanks for asking. So this is actually a really robust sensor, and I'll just hold it up for whoever's viewing to see. This little monitor that gets, just slid into your armband at the start of each day really looks at kind of four areas. So we look at potentially hazardous human motion. So slips, trips, falls, strain and exertion, and really kind of the overall physicality of work. Through our analytics-based platform called MakuSmart, we are able to kind of stack rank workers and say who's exerting the most physicality and who are those that are at risk for, high exertion or fatigue, right? And so you can start making some comparisons among your workers, and then coach through that or make some staffing decisions based on that as well. So we look at motion. Next would be the environmental conditions that are ever changing that are surrounding an individual worker. So low light, high heat, noise, volatile compounds in the air, anything that, at least in the United States, that like OSHA might consider, being dangerous or could cause risk, we're alerting. So anytime a worker reaches a threshold of sound dosage for the day, we're going to alert the leadership to say, hey, you need to go check on the worker to make sure that they have the proper hearing protection in. And if not, let's get them, let's move them out and get them the proper hearing protection. The third area would be really that voice of the worker, right? The ability to leave a voice memo, reporting not only issues or concerns, but also, hey, I have an idea, or this is how my job was designed, but here's how I think it could be better, right? So you're listening to that worker in real time, and you're not waiting for them to possibly, try to report something in 2 weeks. Oh yeah, by the way, there was that thing that happened and I forgot. So we're giving them the power and the ability to report that right away. And then next, we are taking all this information and we're mapping all this information on a facility floor plan, providing really deeper insights into what is actually happening in a facility floor plan. So not only are we looking at the granular individual worker, but we're also blowing it out and saying, hey, what's happening in this space of your facility, right? So why are there more motion indicators in this one space versus another? What's happening here? Or we can now look at shifts overall. That third shift, why are there so many more high force motions during that shift? And so we're able to draw some comparisons and see some emerging trends that are happening. So really, we look at it all the environmental, the motion, and then again, that greater kind of macro level of what's happening in your facility floor plan.
Thank you.
That is
Oh.
truly the greatest strength of MakuSafe, is that they are able to look at many different things from just their device. A lot of technologies do one thing, maybe two things, but MakuSafe does a lot of different things. And that data integration on the back end is really hard when you have to have different technologies to monitor different things. So that really is the greatest value of MakuSafe.
Thanks, Emily, for saying that. And we're really proud of that. And I think what we love about it too, is that we're really equipping leadership from everyone from, the head of safety all the way to maybe a floor supervisor. They would have the ability to see this and help interact and get in front of this for the workers, right? And have those conversations, have those meaningful moments with workers that say, we care about you, we see what you're doing, help us understand how you're working and how can we make it better for you.
Now, I know that we are coming to the end of our time, but before we go, I wanted to hit on that last part of the maturity curve, which is resilience, right? So that would be like a company like L'Oreal would be a very good example of that. It's just a way of life. It's the way they do business. You can see it online. And they have programs like work at home, safe at home, safe at work, safe at home. I'm getting that backwards just because I always think be safe at home and you'll be safe at work, and they work with other organizations outside of themselves like ROSPA, etc., Jacobs, and hold events for other people to come discuss and grow, right? So when we're talking about resilience, we're now looking at a company that has a very intricate, complex understanding. They try to be informed about new and different things all the time. When they're doing their risk assessments, they're actually integrated into their systems. They're really looking at helping employees be self-regulating in style to eliminate problems way before they occur. They look at that all threats are considered when they're making decision making, right? So even when they're just setting up a facility, when it's in the design stage, they're there thinking about what can we be doing. So when we're thinking in that world, what are your recommendations for that resilient group of individuals? Who wants to kick it off?
I can start. So those highly mature organizations are really digital champions. They have likely piloted several types of technologies. They've probably scaled most, or if not all of those technologies. They've probably worked their way through technologies that did or did not work for them. And they really have a clear roadmap for their technology program. They probably are collecting data about the efficiency and the effectiveness of their technologies. And like you mentioned, they are likely educating other organizations on the benefits of safety technologies. And Work to Zero actually has an advisory council made up of companies just like that, who have spent maybe 10 years working through their technology programs. They figured out what works, what doesn't work, what their barriers were, how they overcame it. And now they're educating others about those barriers. And that's really where Work to Zero gets their content from. We mine it from organizations that are of higher maturity that have worked their way through the spectrum. So when we're looking at the different technologies that those more mature organizations are using, they're likely already using, the proximity wearables, the fatigue wearables, the digital gas monitors, but they're probably working their way into the more sophisticated ones like augmented reality, which will overlay information on a user's visual field. They're likely using virtual reality for their training programs, which have shown to produce higher level training. So they're really working their way into those more sophisticated technologies.
Emily, I'll add to that because we have the good fortune of working with a couple of companies like that. And what's exciting is they're saying, hey, we love what your technology is doing, MakuSafe. Could it do this? And they're helping build out a roadmap with us as well. And we're able to now develop some products and beta test it with them to see how we can use our current technology, because they have the benefit of seeing how all this other stuff is working. And maybe ours was the missing piece that says, ooh, if we could bring this all together, what does this look like? So yeah, to your point too, Emily, like getting in front of building new facilities. We're having those conversations. How does it look like? What does it look like to ensure that we can get your technology set up the way we want it set up from the very get-go? Those are super exciting. I would say they're kind of rare. They're a little bit of a unicorn right now, but there are more and more organizations who are understanding the importance of doing that and getting on board. So it's exciting to be a part of that and to see those organizations really kind of flourish.
Yeah, and that really brings it back to ESG and the social responsibility. Those organizations have worked through the kinks, and now they're spending their time helping other organizations and helping advance technology that further will help safety.
Right, absolutely, on a global scale.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate both of you coming and joining us today. So if you want to learn more about what Anna was talking about, this is the MakuSafe website right here. They have a lot of people, a lot of companies that you're affiliated with, and National Safety Council is also one of them. So thank you, Emily, again for joining us. And you can come here and see the tech that Anna was talking about. So that's MakuSafe.com. Thank you very much for sharing that. And thank you very much, both of you, for coming today.
Well, thanks so much, Tamara. Yeah, we're really proud and pleased to be connected both with NSC and also with Safeopedia and Women in Safety. So thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, we greatly appreciate this opportunity to talk about such an important topic.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.